Um, as we're talking about faith at work, the thing that came to my mind this week was $20 worth of rain. That's funny. The about I don't know how many years ago it was, but my last girlfriend before Judy, which I didn't have a whole lot of girlfriends, but I was going camping. I used to go camping a lot with this group of friends that I met through Disneyland, and they were older. So here am I, kind of in my early 20s, and they're in their like 40s and 50s. So that might sound boring. Why am I hanging out with like people that are my parents' age? But like, these weren't my parents' friends. These were my friends that were grown-ups. So hanging out with grown-ups made me feel like a grown-up. It was kind of a big deal, I thought. So it was, I'm guessing you guys have done like potlucks when your families get together, or certainly you've come to church potlucks, right? Where everybody just kind of brings food. The funny thing is if you do a potluck when you're in your 20s, usually people are bringing like tacos, someone's always bringing pizza, which that sounds great, right? But when you get into your 40s and your 50s and you're a grown-up, all of a sudden it's almost more of an opportunity to show off. So people were like, oh, I just made this new duck recipe, or oh, this is my famous blah, 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 or this, I spent 4 hours making this one, or it's just like, because they're, these 2 times a year that we would go camping, this group would really be able to put their culinary work on display. So for me as this 20-year-old, I was always kind of like a little intimidated, right? I'm not going to bring pizza because this group would be like, oh, pizza, how quaint. Not that they're these fancy people, but when someone spent 4 hours making something and it's real fancy and it's really like amazing to taste, and you show up with Little Caesars, it's kind of not great. So anyway, this one time, my girlfriend at the time, she was going to come camping with us, and which was exciting and all. And I told her about like, yeah, Saturday night's kind of a big deal because it's the potluck night and they all bring out their whatever and their whatever. And she goes, ooh, you know what? I could make my mom's fruit salad and I'd bring that. And I remember saying, fruit salad? Really? And that moment like has stuck with me ever since. I still remember, I can vividly picture that moment, the way that felt coming out of me, and the way that I know that must have made her feel. At the time, she kind of said like, oh yeah, blah, 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 blah. But then like I talked to her years later, like after we had broken up and all that, and I was like, hey, remember that one time that you were making fruit salad? And I kind of went, really? And she's like, oh yeah. Yeah, that devastated me. Like that really hurt. And it's thinking about, for me, that was one word, right? All I said was the word really. And it was even the way that I said it, right? I could have said, fruit salad, really? That's a different one, or fruit salad, really. But fruit salad? Really? I was saying with that one word, I was saying that, like, that's, like, I'm disappointed. Or I care more about what these other people think than you. Or I'm embarrassed. Like, all of that I said with that one word, and it hurt her. Like, it had a lot of impact. And so that's what I wanted us to talk about today, with talking about what our faith looks like actually in actions, is how powerful our words are. Because when we're talking about the faith at work, is that we're not just talking about the stuff that we believe. We talked about that last series about understanding the Trinity and understanding Jesus and understanding blah blah blah, and that's all important. But what's also important is what we actually do with that, how we actually put it to work. Not just believing it, but actually having it act itself out in our lives. So we talked about what sticking with our faith produces and what the benefit of that is, and then we talked about what was it that we talked about last week? We talked about doing things, right? And work and deeds was the work that we worked on. word that we worked on. So this week I wanted to talk about how we talk, what that actually looks like. So I found this dumb little video on the internet, or maybe it's a brilliant video. I don't know. We're watching it either way. So again, kind of a weird little video, but it was like I saw that and it made me think about us playing Among Us, right? And that I think part of just being a teenager or a preteen in the 2000s is we rip on each other, we tease each other, we make fun of each other. That's just, and we don't necessarily mean anything mean by it. But the reality is that like the words that we use sting, and the words that we use can really be tough. Like James, that we've been talking about the book of James. James talks about it this way. He says, in fact, let me read it here so that because I can't see the screen. James is right there. All right, so James says. Let's see, we're starting in chapter 3, verse 3. There we go. Right? On the screen. Thank you. When we put bits into the mouths of horses or make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal. Or take ships as an example. Though they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small rudder whenever the pilot wants to go. Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. The tongue is also a fire, the world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, set the whole course of one's life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. All kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and sea creatures are being tamed and have been tamed by mankind. But no, whoops, lost my page. There we go. But no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil full of deadly poison. With the tongue, with the tongue we praise our Lord and Father, and with it we curse human beings who have been made in God's likeness. Out of the same mouth come praise and cursing. My brothers and sisters, this should not be. Can both fresh water and salt water fall from the same spring? My brothers and sisters, can a fig tree bear olives, or a grape vine bear figs? Neither can a salt spring produce fresh water. So we get this picture that words are powerful, right? I mean, like James has said, like that video said, like I think we all know, like there's that old saying, right? Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me, right? Do people even say that anymore? But hopefully you've heard that said to say that like, oh, it's just a word, it's not going to hurt. But the reality is, words do hurt. I mean, for any of you that were paying attention to like our recent election, oh my gosh, there were so many words. There's still so many words being thrown around. Hurtful, hateful, mean, like nasty words that are just being thrown with the intention of hurting. And I think the reality is like all of us have said little things, and we don't intend them to hurt people. I mean, thinking again, like when we're playing Among Us, or those of you guys that do online gaming, whether you're playing, there's tons of trash talk. Or if you've ever played basketball, there's a lot of trash talk in basketball, and people, you ain't got no game, man. You can't blah 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 blah. And the intent with that is usually not to hurt. Maybe sometimes. I mean, the reality is that the intent is not good. There's not like oh, I love this person, I'm gonna make fun of the way they look. Like, come on. Like, no. But it's not necessarily, like, I don't know that we always think about these things that hop out of our mouths. If we say, like, how can you have done that? That was such a dumb move. We might just say that. That just comes out of our brain and then comes out of our mouth. But again, trying to think about, like, what would it be like to hear that? In that little clip, right? This guy playing a video game, and he says, how's it going, slowpoke? And it's just like, that's such a dumb insult that the guy probably didn't mean anything nasty by it. But it's also that thing that it's like, what's it like to hear that? So, like, for me, two things came to mind. Actually, just a couple of weeks ago, we were doing our church staff meeting. And we decided before the meeting to play a little game. And the game, which I even said afterwards, I'm like, I don't think I would play this game with our middle school group. This sounds like an accident waiting to happen. And this is where, you guys know how on Zoom, right, you can change your name. So you can be a different, like, yeah, instead of Jeff, I can be not Jeff or without Jeff or whatever we were saying for a while. So in this game, everyone was supposed to come up with a nickname for each person in the room, and then the person leading the meeting was going to decide which was the funniest, and that was going to be the person's nickname. So some of them were like, pretty generic, and some of them were, teasing or whatever. It came to me. And the vote was, or whatever, the choice was, we were going to call Jeff the professor. Because he always has the answer. And okay, I'm like, that's, maybe you chuckle a little bit about that. But at least for me, I was like, dang, is that how people see me? Like, I'm like a know-it-all that always has the answer? I don't like that. Maybe that's true, but it's not nice to hear. Like, and that was not their intent, obviously. They didn't want to hurt, but what's the result? The words have so much power that what's the result that's going to come out? Same thing, too. I remember when I was in high school. I was a senior in high school, and I had a Latin class. And Latin was the foreign language that I took, which we can talk about that later. That's kind of silly, but anyway, I loved it. I took 4 years of Latin. The fourth year was there was only like 6 of us in the class, and we were all seniors, so we were kind of like, we spent a lot of the class actually just like hanging out with the teacher. And at one point, one of the gals that was very kind of like self-conscious, she started talking, I don't even remember what the situation was, why she brought it up, but she started talking about how much she hated her nose. And she said that, like, oh, it's so huge and it's horrible and no one will ever love me because my nose is so big and blah, blah, blah. She was half joking, but that's just kind of how she would be, She would just grumble and complain about stuff. And so the teacher, who kind of like, that was his thing. He had a big nose. He would brag about his big nose and stuff like that. And he's like, listen, lady, like, you got nothing on this. Like, look at this thing, man. I got this going. There's only one person out here who could potentially challenge this. Jeff, come up here. And he took out a ruler and they measured each other's noses, like my nose and his nose. And for me, again, fun. We're 18, we're adults, I guess, so we're just kind of ribbing each other and stuff like that. But I was like ever since that time, I was kind of like, I had never once thought of myself as someone with a big nose. And now it's kind of that thing of like, dang, like, I'm kind of embarrassed now. Like, that's what people see when they see me. Oh, hey, that's Jeff, the guy with the big nose. And that hurt, and that changed things. And that made, like, I kept thinking about those words that had been spoken. So for us, it's that challenge of like, so what do we do if these words have so much power? Because I think where a lot of times where we go is that we say like, oh gosh, these have so much power, we better not say anything. We have to be so delicate and so like careful about every single word because we don't want to offend anybody. So it's better just to not say anything. So we'll just say like, hello, friend. Hello. How are you? I am fine. Like, is that what it has to be so surface levelly because we don't want any form of like, how's it going, buddy? Whoa, what do you mean by buddy? Like, is that what this means? And for me, I go to, there's a verse in Ephesians, which I know you guys, even if you guys don't know the verse itself, you guys have heard the phrase at the very least. Is that in Ephesians? Come on, bro. There we go. In Ephesians chapter 4. Let me find it. Oh, man. There it is. Okay. In verse 13, Paul says, instead, speaking the truth in love, we will grow to become in every respect the mature body of him who is the head, that is Christ. Speaking the truth in love. I'm assuming a lot of you guys have heard that phrase, speak the truth in love. Because for me, I think that's what we're called to do. We're called as Christ followers to always speak the truth in love. And to be honest, what I have found in my experience, both for me and for people around me, it's easier to do one of those. It's not necessarily easy, but it depends on who you are. For most people, it's easier to do one or the other. It might be easy to speak the truth, and it might be easy to speak in love, but figuring out how to do both of those, that's the real challenge. So first off, let's talk about speaking the truth. Now, the first part is knowing what the truth is. And I think the interesting thing about truth is there's kind of two different sides to truth. One, there's the truth that is like facts. So if we could say like, this book is made out of paper, that is a fact. If I was going to say this book is made out of metal, no, that is incorrect. That is not a fact. So one of those is true and one of those is not. That's a little bit different than truth, however, because truth can sometimes be more like at the heart of what the facts point to. So for example, we believe that human beings are designed to love. Love is their default behavior, is what we believe the underlying truth of all of the facts from the Bible, of all of the facts of observing humanity. That's the underlying truth under it all. Not everyone agrees with that truth, but if we believe that that is truth, then that should be the beginning, and speaking that truth then becomes important. Now, there can be a difference between truth and opinions. If I say everyone should behave like human beings are built to love, you did this, I judge this as not loving, you shouldn't do this. Like, now we're putting truth on top of like opinion on top of truth. And that's where it becomes a little tricky, and that's where that first part, it's not even a first part, you can't separate how to speak the truth in love. Because any kind of speaking, because the reality is you can totally speak truth not from a place of love. And you guys have probably known people like this, right? Where they will speak the truth from a place of, like, I want to hurt you with the truth. I want to give you a truth bomb. Or I want you to think better of me because I know the truth. Or you are wrong and I am right, so I win. None of those are a place of love. Those are all a place of selfishness, right? About me. So instead, and that's the classic example, and I mean, you guys are obviously way too young to have thought about the way you're going to interact with your spouse. But hopefully you've heard the old joke about the wife comes in, or the girlfriend or whatever, the wife comes in a new dress and to the husband says, "Do I look fat in this?" And that's the classic, like, who is going to ever say, "Yes, dear, you're a whale"? Like, no, you're not going to say that. One, let's be honest, saying that is not loving. But, "Oh no, you look wonderful, dear," is that really loving either? Like, let's say that my wife, who is beautiful and will never do anything wrong and looks beautiful and everything, of course. Let's say there was a situation where she put on a dress that did not look good, that was unflattering, and that was kind of like, you might be embarrassed if you wore that out. Like, it's just way too small for you, or whatever the situation was. It's got a rip in it or something like that. And if instead, not wanting to hurt her feelings, instead I just said, "Oh no, you're fine. You look great." Is that really loving? How do we do both? Speaking the truth in love. I think that's the key. So, ultimately, as always, what do we do here? How do we put our faith, all of these things that we talk about, how do we put them into action? I'd say two things. One is the obvious one that we say, hopefully about everything that we do as Christians. It should all start with love. Because if anything that I'm saying, if I can go back in my mind and say, did I do that from a place of love? And if I'm not sure, that's a bad sign. If I don't even ask that question, also not a great sign. Or if the answer is no, those are tough. Like, again, it always has to start from a place of love. I think that's always a great question to ask, maybe even before we say something. Is this from a place of love? And if I have to talk myself into it, again, that's maybe a hint. So now, how do we know this? And I think this is a really interesting challenge for us, is that maybe do like an audit, like they do with taxes, where you look down to see if anything is out of order. So like, maybe reflect back on some things that you have said to other people. And maybe the first thing is, try flipping those around. Try saying, like, what if they would have said the same thing to me? Forget about, well, it wouldn't be true because I'm not there, or whatever. Let's just say they said it anyway. Or whatever. Like, how would that make you feel? Like, one these days is trash, right? We always not just talk trash, but we always say, "That's so trash, bro." And so let's say that you do something, right? And someone says, "Oh, that's a trash move, bro," or "that you're so trash." How would that make you feel if you heard them say that about you? How do you think other people feel when they hear you say that, or someone else say that to them? And that's maybe that second one is, what about actually asking someone else? Like, "Hey, when I said this to you, how did that make you feel?" Takes a little guts, and to be honest, they might not have the guts, especially if this is an issue. They might not have the guts to tell you the truth, so you might have to kind of be like, "No, seriously. No, seriously." Or maybe asking a couple of people. That's kind of a way that, because like, the reality is that if we are called to be loving people, if we want to be loving people, if we want to be people like Jesus, this is one of the biggest ways that we can grow, that we can change, the way that we speak. Does it mean that we're not allowed to curse? Does that mean that we don't? Not necessarily. What it means is we're called to speak the truth in love. That both of those things have to work together to reflect Christ to the rest of the world. All right, let me pray for us. Father, thank you for this morning. Thank you for this time that we're able to spend virtually over over the internet. And I pray that this would be able to sit with us, and that we'd be able to think, because we all do use our words, and to be able to think about the words that we use, how we use them, the impact that they have. Thinking about the people that hear these words and how they feel, is tough, honestly. You got to help us to get to that point so that we can, we can love like you and we can care like you. Be with us as always. We love you, and in Jesus' name.